Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast. My name is Melissa, and this is Sammy. We are diving deep into conversations that connect and inspire. Stories of resilience, triumph, and transformation. Stories that take us to the heart of human connection. Please note that opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast. Please listen with your kindness and an open mind. Each story shared is authentic and vulnerable. Let's embrace our differences with empathy, knowing every voice enriches us. Together, let's cultivate a community of respect and curiosity. Thank you for listening. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired.
Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast, everybody. Today we are here with Jessica Lowe. Jessica Lowe, we reached out to because Candace, actually, who was in another episode for our SMA Awareness Month, sent us her information saying that she has a great story to tell in regards to adding value to the SMA Awareness Month that we're doing this month of August. Jessica's daughter Aubrey was diagnosed with type 1 SMA at 2 months old, and we really want to dive into that story and just hear more about the diagnosis, the process. But we first want to say welcome to the podcast, Jessica. We're so excited to have you here and to get to know you a little bit today and just share your story and hear more about how SMA has impacted your family. So welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So just kind of as I mentioned, if we want to start there, let's just dive in. Aubrey was obviously born, and I think you said at 2 months old she was diagnosed with type 1 SMA. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Are you open to walking us through what that process was, how that diagnosis came to be, what happened that led you to going to get her checked to get diagnosed with SMA?
Yeah, for sure. Aubrey was born like a typical healthy child. She had regular APGAR scores and everything. We took her home. It was our third baby, so we kind of felt like we knew what we were doing. And it was around when she was a month old that we started kind of worrying a little bit that she wasn't progressing how our other kids were progressing. And my first two kids were kind of tough babies. They were kind of spazzes, and she was just this super calm, chill baby. So for a while I kind of was just I've just been blessed after my first two crazy children. I have this nice relaxed baby that's, she slept better than them. She never had crying tantrums or anything. But I had a couple friends who had babies around the same time, and we would get them together, and I would just notice, how newborns will have these spastic movements. They'll kind of, if you lay them on the ground, their legs are going one way and their arms are going another way. And we'd stick our babies down to get beside each other, and theirs would be doing that, and mine would just be Aubrey was just sitting there with her arms and legs kind of still down by her sides. She would her eyes would move side to side, but she was kind of losing the ability to move, or we didn't realize that at the time, but that's what was happening, is that she was slowly losing abilities that she did have. So we took her in. We kind of just decided to watch her closely for a little while, and then I took her in early for her 2-month checkup. And I was telling the doctor my concerns. I was I know we're a little bit early, but I just have some concerns I want to go over. And he kind of brushed me off. He wasn't really paying that close of attention. He kind of said, okay, we'll just come back in a couple months and we'll see how she's doing. And I was is it normal for me to be able to lift my baby's arm up on the, as she's laying down, and drop it and it just hits the bed with no resistance or anything? And I was showing him this, and he was yeah, just come back in a couple of months for her 4-month appointment. We'll see if things are improving. And so this was in the summertime. So I was kind of in the same schedule as I am right now, of going with family we like to go to Montana in the summer, and we had this trip coming up. So we were okay, well, we're supposed to go to Montana for a couple of weeks. So he's not worried about it, and he's a doctor, he knows what's up. So we'll go and we'll see how we're doing there. And so we left, and this was with all of my family, and my sister actually had a baby the day after me. So Aubrey and Cooper are 1 day apart, and he was there. And while we were there, this is early for me to start crying.
It's okay.
Don't worry.
It just basically became apparent pretty quickly that we were like, this is not right. Like, family members were saying stuff, which typically I feel like people try to stay out of it when you have worries about your babies. Like, they're like, I'm sure it's fine. But when I started having other people start to say things like, oh yeah, maybe like this is a little bit different and this is worrisome, we rushed back to Calgary and got a second opinion. So we got a family friend who's a doctor to see Aubrey quickly. So we drive home from Montana and take her in, and he was really great, and he paid attention, and he immediately was like, no, like something's not right. This is not how a typical like almost 2-month-old child behaves. And he sent us to, he kind of like was trying to make us feel okay about it, because he's like, don't worry too much or whatever, like I'm gonna deal with this, and you, like, I might schedule you in to go to the hospital and see some specialists. And then we left and we're driving, and like a few minutes later he calls and he's like, I got you a scheduled in, like go to the hospital now. Like,
Whoa.
so he was like super awesome. He got us in to see the specialist, Dr. Ma, who like knows everything about SMA and is really amazing. And we were able to see her, and we kind of got there, and she explained that there was a few worst case scenarios that we wanted to rule out before anything else. So, and one of those was SMA, and she said, we're just going to run some tests to rule out the worst case scenarios and go from there. And then, you know, series of tests later, by the end of the day, she was like, unfortunately, like, I think this is most likely SMA. Like, I'm pretty positive about it, but we can't tell you that till we get your blood results back, which could take, like, we'll rush it, but it could take a week or so. So she just told us not to Google anything. She said SMA is like a different world these days. So if you Google stuff, you're going to be like, you're seeing stuff you don't want to see, or that doesn't totally show what her future will be like, kind of a thing. So she specifically said, like, do not research it. Just try to not think about it for the time until we get the results, and we'll go from there. And so I took that to heart. I didn't Google anything. I probably should have looked into things more than I did, because I was just like terrified. But I had someone come over actually who has a kid with SMA type 2. He's a teenager now, and he's in a wheelchair full time and stuff like that. And she was the one who told me that Aubrey had SMA type 1, and that was like more severe than her son's case. And I had no idea. Like, I didn't understand that this was something that could kill her. Like, none of that was told to me at the hospital. I was just kind of living this blind ignorance, waiting for these results. But yeah, about 8 days later, the results came, and Dr. Ma was awesome, because she knew that it was SMA, that she was like working her butt off to get Spinraza ready for Aubrey. And she was able to get her first dose of Spinraza the same day that her diagnosis came in. Yeah. So.
Holy.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. She said she's said probably 200 emails had like happened in those 8 days between her and trying to get this drug ready for her. So, yeah.
Wow.
Holy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ma.
Yeah.
She sounds amazing. Like, that's the kind of advocate you want on your side.
Exactly. Yeah.
Holy.
It was a miracle.
That's incredible. And obviously that's emotional for you retelling that story. Can I ask, I don't know how to ask this, like, what part brings up the emotion for you? Is it like how much worrying was going on for you at that period of time, or what brings that up for you?
It's a good question. Funny stories. I told my daughter I was doing this, and she asked what it was about, and I told her it was about Aubrey's story, and she said, no offense, Mom, because I would probably do this too, but you're not going to make it through that without crying. Like, no, you know me too well. I don't know exactly. Like, I guess one thing I do want to get across is that, like, this isn't something I'm sad about. Obviously, I wish my daughter didn't have to deal with the things that she has, but like this overall experience, like, we've witnessed so many miracles, and we're so blessed, and she's doing amazing. And I'm not sad about her disability. Like, that's not ever what I want to portray, that I'm like sad for her, but it's just more of like the journey that it sent us on. And obviously at the time I was in a very dark place.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I can't.
No,
like,
I didn't mean for that to sound like it shouldn't make you emotional. Absolutely, it makes sense that it makes you emotional because first and foremost, you're still very recently postpartum and full of hormones. And so like Huggies commercials can make you cry. But like in this situation, like it's not about, I'm guessing here, I don't want to put words in your mouth. It's not about the diagnosis. It's about all of the emotional stuff that sent you through and the worrying for your daughter that came up at that period of time. Is that accurate?
Well, and at that period of time, I will say, like, it was a devastating thing, of course, like coming as I've gone through it 5 years later. And, you know, I don't feel bad about the world that we live in and the life changes that we've made having a daughter with a disability. At the time, it is a devastating thing to hear that it was a dark period for me. So I definitely was very, very sad about it at the time. But it is something that, like, over time, you see the good in it, and and it also like helps you to learn things. Like, you know, I knew nothing about the disability world coming into this. I didn't really know anyone close to me with a disability. So at the time, it was like this devastating thing. Like when my friend came over, or this family friend who had a son with type 2, like all I knew was that he was in a wheelchair. And to me, that was like, that's terrible. Like, that's what I thought at the time. Like, I was like, oh, that's so terrible. And then she told me my daughter had a worse type than him, like that she's more. And so to me, I was just like, oh my gosh, like I was like heartbroken. And now obviously I'm like, being in a wheelchair is not a sad thing. Like wheelchairs are amazing and they give life to people and independence. And so it's just this like total change of viewpoints and stuff that I've gone through. But yeah, emotions in lots of different ways. But
Yeah, I hear that. And I mean, and she is a determined little lady, isn't she?
Yeah,
Like,
she is.
I was watching, just as we were kind of preparing for this conversation, I was kind of because we've been following you, but I rewatched a bunch of your reels today just to kind of like, I want this fresh in my mind. And I was just watching her. And the one where you looked back on some videos and then showed what she's doing now, I was like, like that just gives me such goosebumps to see her. Like, she's determined.
She is. And I think that's a big part of why she's doing so well. Because she is able to push herself to do things she wants to do, things she wants to keep up with siblings. She'll put in the work. Like, we've been doing physio for years now, since she was a baby, but like actually going in to physio sessions for years. And it has not been an easy ride, but she does it and she just continues to improve. She just wants to do it. And yeah, it's definitely her determination that has brought her where she is today. So
wow, that's amazing. Can we rewind for just one? I just have a quick, and I think you may have already answered it, but so your family friend with the little boy in the wheelchair, you knew them before this?
I didn't know them personally. So it was through, it was actually, I think it was my mother-in-law who put us in contact. So when we learned, okay, Aubrey has SMA, she was like, I know someone with a kid with SMA, and she lives nearby, like she's 10 minutes away. And so she called her up and I just asked if she was willing to come meet with us. So it was when I had this little 2-month-old that had just been diagnosed, and we were still waiting for the blood results to come back. And I was not Googling anything, and I was, living in ignorance. And so that was like, it was a tough conversation and really like eye-opening, but really like something that I appreciated. Seeing her, like her son was already a teenager at that point, or like, I don't know, he was maybe 11 or 12. But just obviously like seeing that life goes on and that they live a good life and all these things was super helpful.
Yeah,
I bet.
So when Dr. Ma came and said like it's confirmed she has SMA type 1, and like the between that conversation and getting the Spinraza, like what was the diagnosis and plan for treatments, and like what did Dr. Ma tell you about what it was going to look like going forward, as much as she could at that time? Do you remember?
It's all a little blurry, but basically she asked me that day, like she said, look, I've done everything I can to get Spinraza and I have it here. It's like here in this fridge or whatever, however it was stored. But you have to choose like whether you want her to have it or not. And I don't know, honestly, I don't even know if I fully comprehended exactly what that meant, but it was kind of, I just knew that it was like something that she needed. At that point, I had talked to my friend, so I knew she had type 1. I knew that without treatment, she would pass away. So it was like, well, of course, we're going to do it. And then that's kind of where I started to learn stuff was more after that. So we said, yes, give it to her. It was given via spinal tap that day, like right then. And then she had, I think it was 2 weeks before her next one. And that's kind of when I started doing more of the like, okay, I got to start learning about what this is now. Like, and Spinraza is something that you take for life. And so there's 4 loading doses that are more close together. And then it's every 4 months. If you continue on the treatment, you have to keep getting it every 4 months for the rest of your life. So, yeah. And she ended up having five doses of that before she was able to get gene therapy.
So I want to ask you about the gene therapy, but did Dr. Ma tell you, did she say like this is type 1 without treatment, she likely won't survive? Like, is that kind of how that conversation went?
Yes. And that wasn't told the first day, like before we got the blood results. That was more, yes, it was probably the day that she was given treatment that it was more understood. And I had known it because of talking to my friend. I did realize that, but she understood more of like, or she explained more about how that works and that this would be what would, that it would target her backup gene. So she's missing a gene and that's why she has SMA, but she also has very few backup genes that, and that's what the Spinraza targets. So that's why she's type 1 is that some type 2s or 3s have more backup genes. And so something like Spinraza can be even better for them because it's targeting, more genes, I guess. I don't know. This is not the best explanation. But yes, I definitely was explained that and knew that this was like saving her life. The way they explain it is that she might not improve, but she won't continue to get worse, is how it was explained to me. So we can't guarantee that she'll improve at all, but at least it'll stop the disease from continuing. Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
So what exactly, I mean, you already explained it, so sorry if I'm repeating a little bit, but what exactly does Spinraza do? Like, does it mimic the backup gene? Does it, from your understanding?
The best way I can explain it, or like how I understand it, is that it kind of strengthens the backup genes. So the backup genes are trying to help the initial gene. The initial gene's not there, so it's trying to do that, what the initial gene's doing, but she has very few of those as well. So it's kind of like strengthening those, the couple that she has. She has 2 backup genes, and it's trying to strengthen those, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when they gave you the Spinraza for Aubrey, they said like, yeah, it'll basically like stop any progression. She'll just stay the same. At that time, like, do you know what the same meant for her? Like what that was going to look like? Or is everything that she's gone through, her progressions and how far she's come, like talking about those reels, the one where you put up with her feet, like the way that her feet had pronated?
Yeah.
Like it was wild. Like, it was incredible how much they had improved. Like, is that, did they know what that was going to look like? Or they were kind of like, we don't really know what this is going to do for her future?
Yeah, it was so new that I think part of it is them limiting expectations. They don't want to tell us that she's going to do things she's not going to do. So because she was so little, and obviously like newborns aren't strong as it is, like they're not born with these like crazy muscles. So she was kind of saying like, we don't know if she will get stronger, but she for sure won't degenerate, or at least that's what the drug should do. And then we'll monitor and like hopefully she does progress. But we don't know what she's lost, like because she's so weak, you don't know which nerves have died, like which muscles still are able to grow. Basically anything that had died already, she was like, if damage has been done enough where like nerves have died, those won't come back. This won't fix that. But if there are nerves and muscles still intact, they can potentially grow.
Okay. Wow.
Holy smokes.
That must be.
So,
no, go ahead, Melissa.
Go ahead, Sammy.
No, go.
Wow, that's incredible. So where does the gene therapy come in?
So gene therapy was not available to us in Canada. So Spinraza, I should start by saying the reason it was so hard to get is that it was only just approved. So she was born May 21st, and I don't know the day it was approved, but it was in May that it was approved. And even after it's approved, it's very hard to get. So this was 2 months later, but it was still like extremely hard to get. Then there's gene therapy that has been approved in the States, and we're seeing all of these. Like obviously this is a rare disease, so that you're not surrounded by people who have it. But I'm part of groups online where I can chat with other parents of kids with SMA. So we're seeing these people in the States who are getting this gene therapy, which replaces the missing gene. So it's targeting the initial gene instead of those backup genes. And it is a one-time IV infusion instead of every 4 months having to get a spinal tap. So we obviously wanted that, but it wasn't available to us. And we didn't know when it would be approved in Canada because that can take a long time. And kids have to get it before they turn 2. So we were on this like time crunch of will it come to Canada before that? And even if it does, like we would have to fight for it because she's already getting Spinraza, and who knows how that's going to work with the healthcare system here. So we are dual citizens, and we decided to kind of take the leap and try moving to the States to get the gene therapy. And thankfully it worked out. That's like I could write a whole book on this process of getting it for her. But we basically, and just as COVID was like going absolutely insane, we moved to Boston, which I don't know if you remember, but like New York and Boston were like the major hotspots of COVID. And we got over the border, and the next day it closed. And we got there not knowing whether she would be able to get it. Like we had done everything we could to kind of put things in place. We had signed up for, what is it called? Medicaid. My husband quit his job as a lawyer here, and we had just bought a house. We actually moved into our first house when Aubrey was a month old. So like right around the time that we were noticing things was when we were moving into our new house. And so it was just this crazy whirlwind of like, we have no idea if she'll get it. Do we give up our house and have my husband quit his job and like go there just hoping? Or do we continue here and like hope that it comes here before she turns 2? And so, we ultimately decided to make the leap and go. And there was like, I don't know, it was crazy. We were trying to decide what the best way to get it. We had heard that it was really hard to get it through Medicaid, and that wasn't a good option. So then you have to look at what jobs can you get coverage really quickly down there, because she's on a timeline where if she gets Spinraza and then we move and she doesn't have access to Spinraza, she starts to degenerate. And so he's looking at jobs, like he was applying for Starbucks or bank tellers or things like that he's just trying to find out, how can I get the coverage that I need quickly? And he actually got a job as he stocked produce like overnight while the grocery stores are closed. And he worked there for, I think, 1 or 2 days before COVID. They actually like shut it down. And then he lost his job that he had gotten specifically for this purpose. And meanwhile, I'm there. I moved there, and then he had to come back and drive our other kids. So I'm there and going through appointments, trying to get in and trying to apply to get Zolgensma through Medicaid. And he's driving up with our kids. And we ended up getting it within 2 weeks of getting there. Like it was this miracle of Medicaid ended up approving it, 0 cost to us. We were ready to go there and be like bankrupt and lose everything. And we got it for free, and we got it within 2 weeks of getting there. So my husband and my kids had to quarantine in the basement for a couple of weeks. And I think I sent you guys a picture of us being reunited after 2 weeks, but everything literally it was like puzzle piece falling in place perfectly. Like just blessing after blessing. Like it was amazing.
That's wild. Like just wild, like on so many levels. Like number one, the way, like you said, every little thing like was so quick to shift. Like you had just bought a house, you had to give up a house, you had to quit a job, a like well-paying job for something else. Like move across the border is closed, your kids couldn't come, you're like Medicaid's not going to get it for you, like so many things that like, holy smokes. And the fight that you guys put up to help her get to where she's gotten to is incredible.
Yeah.
Just and that's only a small part of the story. Like, I know there's so much more that you guys have done. That's just the start.
I definitely rushed through that, and it was just because it's so much all in one. But there was also this like terrifying thing of like, what if it doesn't work? And we just brought our like medically complex child to a COVID hotspot, and like how terrible. Like, there was so much behind it that was just, yeah, I don't know. We were definitely just blessed beyond measures. You know, we're a religious family. My dad gave her a blessing.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, we feel like we really saw God's hand in this, and that we were blessed for just kind of putting our faith in that.
Amazing.
Yeah, I just really wish I could hug you right now, Jessica. Like, I really wish I could give you this huge hug. That's, oh my gosh. Like, I don't know. We're very rarely speechless, and I feel like we're both speechless right now, because that's...
That is a flippin' lot.
Yeah, yeah. And that was in the first, like, 2 months. Not even.
Well, so at this point, she was 10 months old. So she had gotten all of her 5 loading doses of Spinraza. So she got Zolgensma when she was 10 months old. So, yeah, we had ultimately... She was getting closer to... I mean, she still had another year and a bit, but it was kind of like, if it's not even approved in Canada at this point, who knows what's going to happen. There ended up being a Zolgensma lottery in Canada where they were trying to get it to people in Canada since it wasn't being approved. And so I was like friends with all these other moms in Canada who were trying to get into this lottery. And before we left, we had been told that, like, we don't even know if you can get in this lottery, for one thing. And like, what are your chances? Because this is a worldwide lottery. And luckily, like, I think every Canadian kid, don't quote me on this, but I think every Canadian kid Aubrey's age or younger did end up getting it before they turned 2, or were able to fight for it after, because there are kids who get it after 2 now. As research goes on, they're starting to be able to do that. But it was just a total gamble. And I do think that going there, she got it the fastest that she could have gotten it. And I think that really helped her, because if we had waited here, who knows if she would have been the first kid to get it or the last kid to get it, how much longer it would have taken. And like, I just think getting it there ended up being the best thing that could have happened for her.
Wow. Yeah. You guys are like, I want to say like parents of the year. That doesn't even cut it. Like, no, you guys, like, to go on that. I mean, you had to make such difficult, heavy decisions, and then just travel by faith that you were making the right choice and lean on, like, that is just, I'm so glad that it worked out the way that it did for you, because wow, that is hard. That is a lot of choices to have to make. That must have been hard to do as a couple. Was that a challenge to have these discussions and make these decisions together?
Oh yeah, it definitely was. Like, I give a lot of credit to my husband, because like, we did all this research together. We did ultimately, like, together in the research, we were like, yes, Zolgensma is what we want for her. And we were very united on that. And it was more how to get it that we were like, what is the best way to do this? It was just so iffy that it scared me to death to do this. And, you know, not to be vain, but like the worldly things of being like, we just got in our house and like our kids are settled for once. Like, we had done a lot of moving before that. There was a lot of stuff that went into it that made me super just worried about it. And it was hard for me to fully jump in knowing that it wasn't a guarantee. Like, I was like, yes, of course, if I knew that we were going to go there and she was going to get it, I'd be 100% into this. But what if we do all this and it ends up that we get there and she can't get it, and then she's degenerate? Like, I was just lost in this like scariness of it. And we got to the point where we had kind of like done everything we could to prepare to go there. And we had been looking up, trying to find people to rent our house, doing all this stuff, but we hadn't fully committed. And then I still kind of make fun of my husband for this to this day, but we were downstairs doing some like packing up some boxes, like organizing, and his mom called, and I ended up learning from his mom that he had quit his job that day. Like, he hadn't told me. So he had ultimately, like, that was the move that made us be like, well, I guess we're doing it now. Like, there's no turning back. You quit your job. So he, like, I give him all the credit for like having that faith and being like, he knew, like, he was like, we're doing this. And I was kind of going along with the movements, but not fully 100% ready for it. And he did that, which at the time I wasn't super pleased about. But now I'm grateful that he did it, because I don't know if I would have, like, if it came down just to me, I don't know if I would have pulled the plug and made that leap on my own. So yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I was going to say, can I ask you then, like, obviously that's such a great spot to ask about how this has impacted not just your family dynamic with your other kids, but with your husband as well. Like, how has that journey been with you guys? Like, obviously there's been, I'm sure, ups and downs, but how have you guys navigated making these decisions, and who does what, with when, with how, and all of those things?
Yeah, ultimately, I mean, there, like you said, there's always lots of ups and downs. I think when it comes to Aubrey and to all of our kids, like, luckily we're very like on the same page about it all. And so he ended up not being in a job while we were there because of COVID. And so we were there for about 6 months, and he mainly, like, I took Aubrey to all of the appointments. She had to get, after you get Zolgensma, you do have to do steroids for a while, which means blood tests and stuff. And she had a little bit of a rougher ride than some kids do, because it was affecting her liver enzyme. So it was quite a few doctor's appointments. And then we were doing tons of Zoom. Like, all of her therapy was over Zoom because of COVID, and I was doing all that. So we had our divided roles, where he was kind of like taking care of the older two during all of that stuff. I still did have my job, which I work online, thankfully. So I was doing that as well. But then we would get together, and for the rest of the day, like, we really tried to spend as much time together as a family. And we did, like, the whole time we were in Boston, it was just like going on family walks and, watching movies and stuff. And in some ways it was actually like a really special time for us that we were able to be together on that. But I feel like this, since Aubrey's diagnosis, it has helped us we almost have to communicate better and figure out how we're dividing our roles better. So it actually has made us come further as a couple than we were before, I would say, in our communication and in our, like, ability to kind of see what the other person needs and be looking out for each other in that way, if that makes sense. We have had to go through therapy and things to learn some stuff, because there are rough patches, and they say with medical diagnoses that divorce rates, like, kind of skyrocket, and we obviously don't want to be in that statistic. But yeah, I think we've learned a lot and grown closer through it, which has been really great.
Wow. That's amazing.
Very much so.
Absolutely incredible. I wondered if we could talk about now, what does life look for you now? So after that treatment, does she still get Spinraza, or she can't, like, now she doesn't need it anymore because she's had the gene therapy?
Yeah, she doesn't have any more treatments here in Canada. They won't do dual therapy, is what they call it. So once you've had gene therapy, they won't let you have another therapy. These are very like crazy expensive drugs. The gene therapy was like $2.8 million. So it's 2.1 US, so whatever that ends up being. And then all of the therapies, because it's such a rare disease, they're just all these crazy expensive therapies. So in the States, people will do dual therapy. There's actually a third treatment now, which is similar to Spinraza in that it targets backup genes, but it's a daily oral drug. And I don't know if you want to get into stuff like this. She's actually taking that now, but it's through a trial. So we've recently started a trial where she is getting that. And for us, it's kind of like when you do a trial, you can then continue that drug after the trial. Like, you keep getting access to it. And for us, it was kind of like, we want to be able to have that as a backup, because heaven forbid, like gene therapy is supposed to last forever. But what if it didn't, kind of a thing? And what if they don't want to give us other medicines because that one was already so expensive? And yeah, I forget what your question was. I just went off on a tangent. But
No, you didn't. You didn't at all. So now she's doing physio.
Yes,
a lot.
How
often is she doing physio?
It goes up and down depending on our schedule. For a long time there, we were doing twice a week and 3 times every other week. She was doing physio twice a week, every week, and then I was doing an OT session every other week. And then this past year, she started doing a different program where she was getting some physio worked in with her, like, type of a schooling thing with her aide. And so we tried to do twice a week. We dropped the OT, but we did once or twice a week of physio. That's kind of like her extracurricular activity now. She actually enjoys physio now, despite her early videos. Or I don't know if enjoy is a strong word, but she does not hate it. And, you get to do some fun things there, and she works hard, and that's kind of what she does. She's starting to want to do more stuff. Like, we did swimming lessons this past spring. Wow. And she really wants to do gymnastics and dance. So we're looking into how to accommodate that. But
Sammy, can I ask one more thing, and then
go.
That you rock it. Sorry, I gotta take over there. So can you tell us, and if this is too much, please we can disregard it if this is too much. But can you kind of tell us, like, what is she physically able to do now? And without the treatments that you fought so hard to get, where would you be right now?
Yeah, so without the treatments, she would not be here. Type 1s pass away typically before they turn 2 years old. So what SMA does is it takes away all of your muscle until you can't breathe or eat. And so we would have just been slowly watching her lose her muscle tone until she couldn't do anything, and she would pass away. So that is what people in the past before these treatments have, for type 1s, that is what they deal with. Luckily, we saw, like, right away, like from the first Spinraza dose, we started seeing progress. So she, things that you don't even think about, like, I would take a picture and be like, what do you see in this picture that, like, you wouldn't notice normally, but it's making my heart skip a beat? And it would be like that her finger was curling around a toy or something, like the ability to grasp something, or like eventually, like, she could get her hand back up to her mouth because she couldn't get her arms up to her mouth. Or, from there, like, she's grabbing her toes again, or she can, like, tummy time was the hardest thing for forever. Like, getting her head off the ground was so hard. And yeah, so obviously where she would be is she wouldn't be here. And now she's 5 and she is walking independently. She's slow and she's, prone to falls and things like that. But she is the most, like, she just wants to be as independent as possible. So she can crawl. Crawling is actually harder than walking, which is kind of funny. But yeah, she's walking on her own and doing, she climbed up on our stool the other day to have breakfast. Like, she just will do anything to show me that she's independent. So she's really doing amazing.
Wow. That's incredible.
We're going to just cry over here with you, Jessica.
So amazing. Okay, go ahead, Sammy. I'm sorry. I know I kind of took over there.
No, I feel like I take over all the time. I'm just in my head trying to put myself a lot in your shoes to the best of my ability, and just think about, like, how mind-blowing in, like, the most heartbreaking and heartwarming way at the exact same time it must be for you as a parent to have a child who, if she had been born 3 months earlier, this would not be your story.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And, like, I know, like, Jessica Janzen's story, like, she's talked about that with her son and another kid that she knows who was born in the States, who was the exact same age, like 3 weeks apart from her son, because they had access to treatment and she didn't. Mm-hmm. And, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I would break down on a regular basis of in gratitude for the way that the story went. And I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just like saying, like, I think that seeing progressions and seeing all these things that she's able to do and thinking like what could have been if you didn't have access to that treatment.
Absolutely. And Jessica's story and mine, like in parallel, so either of my older kids could have also, like, it's a genetic disease that my older kids could have just as easily had, and neither of them would have had treatment. And Lewiston is actually would be the same age as my middle child. And his timeline, like, he was born in May, same as Aubrey. Our like stories, like Jessica's story when she shares it and my story, like, it's just crazy how much they line up, and they're just a couple years different. And she was on vacation, like, it was just one thing after the other, like, hearing her story, like, it just, I try not to, but I feel like guilty listening to it, because I'm like, that could have just as easily been my kid. And like, just being born a couple years later, we followed the exact same schedule and like timeline of like how our kids were doing and how they were diagnosed and all this stuff. And she just didn't have access to treatment until it was too late. And yeah, it's really makes you count your blessings.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Outside of your stories being so similar, like, is there things that the Love for Lewiston Foundation have done? Is some of the things that they've done impacted how things have resulted for you guys?
Yeah, we've actually used Love for Lewiston to help us in a couple of ways. One, the cost of physio is like overwhelming. When you go from not having to do that to like your kid needs it, and what the province will provide for you is just doesn't even come close to what Aubrey needs. So if we only use the free treatment that we would get through the government, she would be seen like maybe once a month for an hour at the hospital, and it's more of like a checkup to see how she's doing, and then they give you like things to work on at home type of a deal. And with SMA, and like especially with her type 1 and being treated like that, she just needs constant physio, and if I could do it every day I would. But it's $160 every time you go in, and your insurance, like, for the first couple of years we were taking her, I think we got $500 coverage total. So your first few sessions were covered, and then you're going 2 or 3 times a week for the rest of the year. Like, the cost is astronomical. And Love for Lewiston, we applied, and they were able to give us a good chunk of money that when we were kind of like really stressed, like I told you, my husband had quit his job, and luckily he did find a job quickly when we got back, like, but finances were hard for a while, and it was something that we were not willing to not provide for her. Like, we knew that it was what she needed, but we weren't financially, like, it was very stressful. So we've been blessed that they helped us with that. And then we also used them again when we moved to our new house that we're in right now. We moved out to an acreage so that we could be in a bungalow and make it accessible for her, which again is like astronomical costs. And they helped us provide a portion for our elevator that we put in for her so that she would have access to our full house. Because although she is walking now, stairs are not something that are safe for her to do. So she's able to use that herself and go up and down to the basement. And yeah, so those are the 2 things. And like, I try to be like, we are very blessed, and I know there's other people who struggle more, and they've been like a huge blessing to other people, and I try not to use them too much. They're always asking me like what I need. They're amazing. But in those times of need, they have come in clutch, and like, yeah, the blessing that they covered like I think it ended up being like a full 6 months of physio for her that we were just probably weren't able to cover at the time. And the physio has been what's made her grow the way she has, because I can do stuff for her at home, but I'm not trained, and sometimes I worry that I'm hurting her more than I am helping her if I'm not having her in the right positions. When you see what they do at physio, the government programs expect you to watch what they do and be able to do it all at home with them. And it's just not I've learned a lot over the years now. Like, I do feel like I'm like I could get certified as a physio soon over these 5 years that I've had. But at the beginning, sometimes I watch those videos and I'm like, I would have been like hurting her in the long run if I just continued to do things the way that I did. So anyways, yeah, again, I'm going off on another tangent, but yes, love for Lewiston like has blessed us over our journey and continues to, and they're amazing.
Wow. That's go ahead,
I was
Sammy.
just say it's crazy how full circle that is. Like, it's pretty wild too. And I mean, when we were at the Love for Lewiston event, I'm pretty sure a video of you with Aubrey played in talking about that they've given you access to physio. And we hadn't heard of you at that point in time. But when we saw that video, and then when Candace sent me your Instagram page and I went onto it, I'm like, I think this is the same person that was on the video at the Love for Lewiston, because you were talking about the access to physio, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they did. They came and took a video of her at physio one day and asked me some questions. So I talked a bit about that. And just to go back, like also just specifically to Jessica Janzen and the fact that she has put this together in this, like after having her son pass away, like I just can't fathom it myself. Like I can't imagine like doing that myself if I was in her position. Like I just think she's amazing and can't believe how far the Love for Lewiston has come, and that she was able to do that, and she was able to turn around something that was devastating and turn it into something beautiful, and she's helped so many people. So yeah, I'm like the biggest Love for Lewiston fan.
I believe it. I know obviously like you talked about like making your house more accessible for Aubrey.
Yeah.
And part of what we want to do with our SMA Awareness Month is help people like raise awareness towards not only SMA itself, but also like how little things in the community can impact different families and how they also add value to us. Can you speak about how, I know there is a few of them in the city, that accessible playgrounds for kids makes a difference for Aubrey being a kid?
Yeah, I can. Actually, we just went to this Splash Variety Park on Glenmore Landing. And I was just posting about this the other day because we aren't here like a ton in the summer sometimes, so I don't get to explore as many of them as I'd like to, but they are just, honestly, I don't know why more parks aren't made accessible, because as far as what I've learned since having Aubrey, like it seems like the cost, there's some things that don't cost a lot more to make a park accessible than just like, putting that rubberized stuff instead of the wood chips or things like that make it so that everyone can be involved. So we went to this Variety Splash Park, which is an amazing accessible playground, and it was super busy. It's a splash park and a playground all in one, and a large majority of it is accessible. I don't think I saw another kid there with a physical disability while I was there that night. But the park was just like, it's one of the most fun parks out there, and everyone was having fun. And Aubrey was able to do everything. They had one of those, like, I don't know what you call it, but normally it's something you would step up onto, and it's like a circle, and you hold onto the bars and you spin. And this one was just built into the ground instead of up above the ground. And it had like a little seat in the middle. So she was able to get up and sit on the seat, and all these kids were spinning her and just having a blast. And just, it's a park for everybody. Like, it's something that I never would have thought of before having Aubrey. But now I'm like, what? Like, everything should be like that. Just like everyone should be included. Because it doesn't take away from anyone else when you do those things. Like, it's just making it better for everybody. Like, I think it was probably every kid there. Like, it was my kid's favorite park of all the parks that we go to. Like, all the closer parks that aren't accessible that they have at their fingertips. Like, they would way rather go to this other park. It's so fun. So, yeah.
We go to that same park too, and my kids also love it. I saw you post that you were there. I was like, oh, we were just there the other day.
Yeah, and there's so many things on there that I'm like, yeah, this isn't any harder to do than like the alternative that it would be on another playground. And she was able to walk herself up like the ramps, because she can't do stairs. So even if she's not in her wheelchair and she's walking, the ramps are really helpful. So she's able to walk herself up. She was able to go on a slide for the first time ever because she was able to get herself there, and it was a small enough slide. And just, I don't know, she was just having the time of her life, like doing things independently, like asking us all to come watch her, so proud of herself. And yeah, it was like the best night.
Wow.
You know, you just
That's
totally, I feel like Melissa's always the one who's like, you blew my mind. But you did just for me because like I've thought about like how the ramps make it more accessible and how that's really good, but it never went through my brain the grounding, like the ground, the difference from the gravel. Like obviously it makes sense. It's hard to push anything through gravel, but it didn't occur to me the ground also making a big difference, which makes perfect sense. It just didn't occur to me in that way. And even when you think about the, like, I don't know if it's a merry-go-round, but the accessible merry-go-round, whatever it may be, safer for everybody. There's nothing to trip over, nothing to go flying off of. If you do go flying off it, you're not falling off of anything. Because when we were there, we definitely spun it fast enough that some kids flew off, but they didn't fly off of anything. It was just onto the ground, not down. You know, so it really is like, it really, having those accessible playgrounds really does make a difference, not just for the kids that need it, but for everyone else involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd rather my kid fall down a ramp than down a set of stairs. So
Yeah.
That's amazing.
oh my gosh, Jessica, thank you so much for sharing this. I don't know if you have an answer to these two questions, but actually 3 questions. I got 3 more. But can you speak on what it's been like as a parent with a child with SMA versus your other 2 children? Like how you feel like you've shifted any of your parenting, or maybe not at all, or what it's changed, or it's the exact same, or there's anything that you've done differently with those kids?
That's a good question. We try not to treat them differently, and to like it is hard because obviously Aubrey needs a lot more assistance and things than my other kids. One of the biggest hurdles, I guess I would say, or like complications as far as raising our kids that we've faced since having her is just, it can be hard for other kids to understand when their sibling needs a lot more attention. So my older kids are amazing, but sometimes it's hard for my like middle daughter especially to, because she's not only younger and doesn't quite understand as much as my son does, but she's also like the girl, and she wants her mom and stuff like this. And so it's just been a tricky thing to navigate, making sure that everyone is feeling that they're getting, you know, equal love and attention. So one of the things we did start doing is we started dating our children. So we make sure, we try to once a month take one of our kids out on a date and give them that like one-on-one time, so that because otherwise, like, it's just, if you don't schedule it in, it wasn't happening. And I'm always with my youngest daughter. I take her to everything and I'm with her all the time. And even when I'm with my other kids and feel like I'm having this like really good time with them, I'm always like helping my younger daughter too. So we were just noticing that, I don't know if you can call it resentment, but like, you know, my middle daughter would start not being as understanding towards Aubrey, or like, oh, she doesn't need you to help her with that or something, or like, I don't know, things like that. And so we're still in the middle of trying to navigate that. But in general, like, parenting Aubrey, the trickiest thing is just that everything that we want her to do all the same things as my other kids and to have access to all the same things. And it's just not an accessible world that we live in, and nothing is ever easy. And so it's just exhausting because everything is a battle and everything is a fight to get her equal rights as my other kids and things. So an example of that is like getting her into school, into kindergarten this fall. Like, it's all turned out great, and she's enrolled and she's going to have an aide there, but everything's just made tricky because she has this PUF funding to give her an aide through school, and you get up to 3 years of that. So she's had an aide for the last 2 years, but they've made it so that you can't transfer that funding to a public school. So you have to stay in your specialized school if you want to use that last year. But she's ready for a public school, and her friends are all going to a public school. And I think she has the right to go to a public school. And she wants to ride the bus with her siblings and like things like that. And just stuff that should be, in my mind, like that should be a no-brainer. Like she should be provided that. She's a regular human being, just like my other kids are. And so just fighting for the funding to get her an aid was tricky, and we didn't really know whether she was going to be able to do it or not until last second at the very end of the school year. They gave us the news that they were able to like pull. I don't know what they did, to be honest. I had to get doctor's letters written, physio letters written, send them in, tell them my daughter has the right to go to school and to be safe while she's there and stuff like that. And so I guess that's like the biggest thing that I've noticed parenting a child with a disability is like, my daughter's happy and she's like living her best life. There's nothing about her disability that makes her sad. She's never like feels down that she can't do something that my other kids can do physically, but she lives in a world where she's trying to be held back. Sorry.
No. Take your time.
No, absolutely take your time. Absolutely. That is so, that sounds so difficult. Like you have had to advocate for her on so many levels from the starting point. Like you are like like you're like a lioness advocate. Like you're like out there, and I know it's probably like, well, this is what you do but I just want to I don't know, I just feel like saying that to you, like you're doing an incredible job of advocating for your child. And it's not fair that, I think that's the part, and I don't want to take this down a negative train at all, but that's the part in having these conversations that bothers me the most, is how hard you have to advocate through bureaucracy. Is that the right word? Like that there are things holding you back or things that you have to fight for that just aren't fair. That's not fair. Like you're 1,000% right. Like she should just be able to go to school. You shouldn't have to fight that hard and uproot your entire life to get a treatment that is out there. Because if it's out there, you should be able to get it. So that part, like, I think my prayer would be at this point in like the big picture of this, that those things can change. Like it feels like somebody who has lived through this journey a little bit or has had their life touched by this a little bit should be on the bureaucracy making side of things. Like they need to have people in the offices making these guidelines.
Yeah, I agree. Like that's like some of the decisions that are made. I'm like, who's making these decisions? Like this is obviously not made by someone who's ever like been close to somebody with a disability. And why is that the case? Like why aren't there people with disabilities being asked these questions? And yeah, it always just blows my mind. But I will say, like, I know things have come a long way, and like I am so happy that she's growing up in a world that is changing in the right direction. Because there are people like Candace has been in the disability world a lot longer, and she's had to put up with a lot more, and she's probably seen all these positive changes. And I feel blessed that like the playgrounds, like those were never a thing however many years ago, I don't know. So there are definitely steps being made in the right direction, and I'm really grateful for that. But it does just blow my mind how many things have to be a fight for her. Like how it just seems like it's one thing after another. Nothing's ever easy. Nothing's ever like, I don't know. And granted, before I entered this world, these aren't things I would have thought of either. So I understand it.
Yeah.
And I don't, hold that against anyone for not thinking those things because I was there. But it is, something and that's why I'm grateful for people like you who want to shine a light on these kinds of things. So I appreciate that.
Of course, we feel like we're doing hardly anything, but we are impacted by these stories in an incredible way. As you're speaking and I'm thinking about other conversations we've had, I'm thinking about how like it used to be a world where it was like the world has determined what you are capable of, and this is your limit. And we're trying really hard to shift it to a world where you don't get to decide that I'm capable of this based on my diagnosis. I can decide whether I'm capable of this. But the ability for me to decide that has to be there in order for it. And so like we're trying to make the shift where it used to be, no, sorry, you have SMA, you have a disability, you cannot play in a playground. And that's what parents would tell their kids in the day was like, no, you can't. Sorry, you can't. And we're trying to move to a world where it's like, maybe you can, and I'll let you decide whether you can or can't, instead of me deciding whether you can or can't.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too, like, comes down to people's comfortableness, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know what a good example of what I'm trying to get at is, but people don't want to ask questions. They just want to assume. Like, you'll hear people who like will say, like, there'll be people who have a disability who will say people will talk to their whoever's with them and like about them instead of just asking them or things like that. Like, I don't know, there's just a certain like uncomfortableness with disability that I think people need to get over and be like, I mean, I don't have a disability, so I shouldn't be speaking to this, but I think I would assume that a lot of people with disabilities would appreciate being asked and not just having people assume things about them. And I don't know, some examples that I've seen with like other young kids is like going to school and like a choir concert. And I don't know, I saw this one video where they all get together in a circle and hold hands and sing a song. And the kid in the wheelchair is off to the side, outside of the circle during this song.
What?
And yeah, and just things like that where I'm like, why don't we just think about how, like, there's easy solutions to a lot of these things. Like, that's obviously, I mean, to me, I hope to most people, that's a very obvious, like, way to include someone. But I think there's lots of other, maybe less obvious ways. But if you just are willing to ask the questions and be comfortable, so many of those situations would be avoided. So,
yeah. And it's very different as a human being, period, to go and try to do something or ask to be involved in something and to be able to be like, nope, I can't, versus being told you can't.
Yeah.
Those are two very different situations. We've kept you for a while now, so I want to let you go, but I want to ask you two quick more questions, unless Melissa has any before we let you go.
No,
and
you go ahead, Sammy.
One of them I want to ask, what do you see for the future, and what are your like hopes for the future with Aubrey? Like, is there anything that you've been told, like, this is what we might see for the future, or do they basically say like, we don't know? And what are your hopes for that?
No one will ever say, like, I was actually just talking to my mother-in-law, was it today or yesterday, but she was kind of like, remember when, like, we were just praying that she would regain some movement in her hands and be able to operate a joystick, or like, because no one would ever tell us. Like, I would have people asking me all the time, is she ever going to walk? And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know if she'll, like, no one has ever given me any insight into this. Like, and it's hard because it's a rare disease. The treatments are all new. There are kids who are older than her who have had them. But even amongst those, like, all the kids are so different. It depends on so much. It depends on the progression of the disease and when they were treated and how they respond to treatment. So there's no real, like, telling exactly what her future holds. I personally just see her continuing to improve. I think keeping a positive attitude is the only way to go. And so far that has been her case. She is just continually improving. Not to say that there's not bumps in the road, like for instance, her pronated feet. Like there are things that come up that like complications that we have to deal with. And my hope is just to avoid as many of those that will give her long-term negative effects as possible. So for instance, she's wearing like a TLSO, a spinal like brace, because she was having some scoliosis. And again, super blessed that she wore that for, I think she got it in October, and we found out that her scoliosis went from 32 degrees to a 7-degree curve, which they say is like not even a curve. Like if it's under 10, they don't classify it as scoliosis. And so my main like goal is just to avoid as many long-term like hard things for her that'll cause her pain and discomfort down the road, because I just want her to live as full a life as possible. She's so active. She wants to do everything, and all I want to do is provide anything that she wants to do. She's super happy, like super positive, and never gets down on herself. And that's my hope. So whatever physical things come in the future, my hope is that she just stays her same positive self, and hopefully we can do what we can to help her in that.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful, Jess. That is really beautiful.
Best answer ever.
Aubrey's very lucky to have you, and we don't know her dad, but very lucky to have you both as parents, and an incredible family that's got her back and has rallied so hard behind her, like truly, honestly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to ask, last question, if you could think back to when Aubrey was first diagnosed and you were in that really hard season, and you were to think of either giving yourself advice or giving advice to a parent, or words of comfort or whatever it may be to a parent that might be in that same situation right now, what would you say to them or yourself?
Honestly, when you were asking me if there was anything that I would want like people to get out of this, that's exactly what I was thinking of, is what would I tell someone who's starting this journey? And it's such a hard question to answer, because I think I somewhat like block out how I was at that stage, but I know it was a very dark spot, and I feel like it just feels like a long, hard road, and everything progresses so much slower, and so it can sometimes be super overwhelming and feel like it's this, I don't know, just never-ending like hard situation at the beginning. And so all I would just say is that it gets easier, and that you're gonna witness so many blessings that you otherwise wouldn't. Yeah, I'll leave it at that before I lose it again. But yeah, you can be in a dark spot, but it will get better. And also to use your family, like your SMA family. There's a lot of, that's what saved me, and that's honestly why I post and kind of log her journey through my social media, is because that's where I found a lot of light when I was in that spot, was being able to see others going through it as well. It's hard to connect with people physically with rare diseases, so just another piece of advice would be to connect with your SMA family as well, and pull strength from them.
That's really beautiful, Jess. Yeah. Oh, Jess, thank you so much for sharing yours and Aubrey's story of her diagnosis and the journey that you guys have been through. I know that we've only scratched the surface on that story, but we don't want to keep you all night long. But like, we are so grateful for you giving us your time and sharing your story with us, with perfect strangers, just to help us raise awareness for spinal muscular atrophy. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I hope I didn't ramble too much about stuff.
Not at all. It was wonderful. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
just been such a joy to chat with you, and we're just so grateful, honestly.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. To help support the growth of this podcast, please feel free to leave us a review, follow us on socials, or recommend us to your friends. Your support honestly means the world to us. With love, Sammy and Melissa.